Welcome back from your first tutorial to your second tutorial now, looking at grammar and originality reports and tools on Turnitin.com. If you're watching this and it's minutes before your paper is due, it's too late. You should have already done this, but you still have time. Just click stop, upload your paper to Turnitin.com, and let's just go from there. But for the rest of you that are watching this ahead of time, this is going to give you an opportunity to explore some of the tools, especially the most powerful tools, and use Turnitin.com in a way that isn't just about plagiarism and catching you in the act. It's a way for you to develop skills, figure out how not to be in that position. So let's dive right in. What we want to look at in this tutorial is three things mainly. Number one, we want to look at Turnitin.com and how it can be used before the deadline of your paper to actually improve your writing and to improve your communication in that paper. Number two, we want to look at how we can use the originality report as feedback that's automatically given to us right away for writing and voice in our paper. And then finally, we want to look at the Grammar E Rater tool, which is more powerful than Microsoft Word. But Microsoft Word is pretty good to start, but it doesn't catch everything. But the E-Rater from Turnitin.com catches more and gives us a little bit more information. So we want to look at those tools because they are tools for us to use. Plagiarism is not the only thing Turnitin.com is used for. It's not the only tool. Too often teachers use it as the only tool is to check for plagiarism, but you as a writer can use it as a tool to check for plagiarism as well before the deadline so that you can resubmit or so that you can use the tools from Turnitin.com. Let's take a look at originality reports and see what plagiarism may or may not look like based on those scores that everybody's so afraid to get. Far too often, students and teachers see Turnitin.com as just a plagiarism catcher. And it is certainly a good tool for that. But I wanted to spend just a few moments looking at some of the tools that Turnitin.com provides that are more than just an originality score. They're more than just grammar checker. We're already logged in. You can see we're part of the class. But I want to point you to the tabs. When you log in, this is what you see. You can enroll in a new class, shows all of the classes you're currently enrolled in. Here's our class right now. You can also, though, see what is plagiarism and citation help. And I just want to point you towards that because when you click on that, it takes you to plagiarism.org, which is a whole slew of information that will help you if you don't know what plagiarism is, or if you're worried about what plagiarism might look like or what it might not look like, and how do you cite your sources. And it's so important that we look at and understand the terms and citation and cite and all of these things, and those are outlined for us. And there are tons of resources that they've put together, student materials and videos, and checking for plagiarism. I mean, you can look at all of these as possible tools, and they also offer citation help. So a couple of things I just want to point out here. Why do you cite sources? How do you identify them in the body of your paper? This is key. Quoting material. What is it? How often should I quote it? And how do I incorporate it into my paper? But then, how do I include long quotes in my paper? How do I list things in a bibliography or references page or footnotes? All of these different things are resources that I wanted to point you to. The plagiarism is more than just plagiarism that Turnitin.com helps us with. It helps us prevent that from becoming a problem and from making academic dishonesty a real issue. These are tools that are there to help you out. I hope you take advantage of looking at some of those. Okay, so you can see that we have submitted a research paper. The research paper isn't due until the 30th of December at 11:59 p.m. And it is an opportunity for us now to take a look at some tools that Turnitin.com provides. We will look at the similarity report. Now, green, yellow, red, whatever, it isn't necessarily about the color that a teacher might look for. It's about how and what a number that the teacher might look for. There's no good amount of plagiarism. There's a way that we need to look at the originality report to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing within our paper. So let me show you an example of a good score, a good set of feedback. So we click right on that percentage to bring up the feedback studio, which is kind of our hub for our paper. And I'm going to make this a little bit more readable here, so it's not so huge, but you can see over on the right-hand side that our match overview is 20%. And if we click on that, it's going to tell us where we got that match. So we need to start looking at this, and your teacher looks at this way too, and you can scroll through, and you'll find that where there is a question, then it highlights it. So you'll see that from this internet source, commercialfreechildhood.org, and this paper is about the effects of advertisement on our youth. We have 9% a match. 9% of that 20% comes from that site. So if I'm looking at that, I gotta say, all right, fine. Now, this is saying it comes directly from that website. Have I cited it? Well, if you take a look, the author is introduced. Robert Bly explains in his research about advertisement effects on children as, and then the research is there, or the quote is there. But here's the problem. It's not actually quoted. And so we have a situation now where if I click on that link, I can see that, the commercialization of childhood threatens children of their right to develop to their full potential as social beings, a most basic right of childhood. That's an exact quote. You've presented it as a summary or a paraphrase. That's disingenuous, and that would fall certainly under a very strict version of academic dishonesty. You've quoted exactly from here. Yes, you've cited, but you've quoted, and there is not a quote that you've indicated in this case. So if we keep going, you can go by site. So we're going to stick with our 9%. Again here, you can see that in this situation, we're going to go back to that feedback studio, that in this situation, we can look at this kind of side by side now, and we can see that the commercialization, we go to match number 2. They're having secondhand experiences. Summarize this article, but again, you're not quoting it directly. You haven't quoted it here when it's actually pulled directly from there. This is an okay problem to have. You just got to make sure you're quoting it. Match 3 of 6. We can cycle through all of this, and the nice thing is it shows your paper and it shows the actual website and where it's coming from. So as a teacher, we need to make sure that you're citing this appropriately. So then we can take a look at source number 2. Here, this might cause a little bit more of a problem because now I'm looking at mainstream media, according to. So we've got to make sure that we're citing this appropriately, and if it's an exact quote, that we are pulling that and quoting it exactly, and not looking and acting like it's a paraphrase or a summary. So we've got some issues here that we need to work our way through, and you can always cycle through these. Now, if we go to My Healthy Place, same thing, things have been cited. We need to make sure that they're appropriately cited. If we take a look at Huffington Post, in the next 10 years, the number of, where did that come from? Have we attributed the author? Yes. Have we quoted it as exactly? Yes. Why aren't there quotation marks? So this is a way for us to use some of this information. You can see that in Carolyn Kolbaba's article over psychology and advertisement says, and then here's the quote, but the problem is that it's not quoted the right way. And so we need to be very careful in order to quote these things um, directly. If we are, that we're using quotation marks as a whole. So while 20% isn't a bad number and it showed up as green, it still indicates that there's some problems that we need to work on and some things that we need to look at in terms of the originality and our mechanics of writing. Now I want to talk to you and show you an example of a bad situation with originality. We've got a 54% similarity score for John Doe's paper here. So we need to explore this. If I'm John Doe, this is before the deadline. If I'm John Doe, I'm looking at a deadline of December 30th, and I've gone on and I've looked at this originality score, and I realized I got something I need to think about and work on here. And so we're going to take a look at that. So we click on that. Again, we go back to the Feedback Studio, and we can see now, this takes a little tour if you're there for the first time. It shows you that, you can look at the layers of feedback, and you can review your overall feedback and the similarity levels, and how you can view it in the text that we looked at. You can download your work if you need to, if you've lost that file. But let's get started. So this is a 54% similarity paper. This is not a good sign. And so it's always helpful to have this window open. And if I'm looking at that, I'm seeing a lot of different sources that have been used. And I'm going to want to go through. You can scroll through your whole paper and see exactly where all of these are. And if I'm a teacher and I'm looking at this, I'm starting to say, oh, we've got some major issues that we need to look at and we need to figure out, because there are entire texts of the paper, paragraphs of the paper that are highlighted. And what I want you to understand is this paper is your voice. You're not necessarily an expert, but you're going to use the experts to bolster your voice in this research paper. And it doesn't appear that John Doe has done this at all. What it appears to me, at least at first glance, is that John Doe is just copying and pasting other people's stuff and just letting it speak for itself. Maybe citing it, maybe not. But if you got a whole lot of stuff that's highlighted, you've got a problem that your voice isn't coming out in the paper. So there's a style and a mechanics issue that needs to get addressed that the originality report can show us. But now we got to dive into the more important part, which is the plagiarism that's evident. So let's start with the biggest offender, and that's this one from Prageroo.com, and we can see that it is largely lifted directly from this website. There are no citations. You can go line by line, and you can see that they are directly lifted from this site. And this is clear example of plagiarism. This is one that a teacher would ask you to fix before the deadline, if you have that opportunity. But after the deadline, this becomes an academic dishonesty violation, and the consequences move forward from there. But we can go through and we can see, we can match text for text, line for line with this particular source. And so if we look, we've got a potential issue, a real issue there, not potential. But if we look now, okay, so the cost of, and we're working our way through that one. Sorry, I lost that again. But next one, again, we're pulling this directly from, and we're not quoting it at all. This is just straight up lifted from this particular website. And it may have been good, but you haven't given any of that credit to that person that wrote that. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes the citation in the bibliography comes back as from a different source. As a teacher, we don't look at that and we don't say, oh, wow, well, that's something that we need to actually pay attention to. That's not plagiarism. There might be mechanical issues wrong here, but that's not plagiarism. But as we look at things like science.howstuffworks.com, and we see this is starting to get way overboard in terms of our examples of plagiarism. So if I'm John Doe, I'm looking at this before the deadline, and I'm saying I can clearly see what I need to fix. I can clearly see what needs to be cited or what needs to be rewritten or re-researched. Because I've clearly found some some issues with my voice, some issues with my mechanics, and some clear issues of academic dishonesty and plagiarism. Another part of this tool is helping you out to avoid the potential problems when you turn this final paper in. The last tool that I want to show you within this after the post date is the grammar checker, the ETS E Rater. And if we take a look at the ETS E Rater, it will highlight this information in your particular paper. And it's a very complex grammar checker. And so you have to kind of look at this. In this title, it says there's an article error. You may need to use an article before this word, considering using the article the. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to follow every indicated situation, but it's going to say, that you're going to want to make sure that you're not missing a comma where you're supposed to have a comma. You're going to have article errors. There's looking at all of these things that are very, very complex. This can lead to children having, confused, or are you using the right one? See, it's very, very specific, which is your job to look through to make sure that this is a particularly appropriate, grammar check in this case. But it is a pretty powerful tool, more powerful than Microsoft Word. It looks for things like passive voice, and passive voice may or may not be okay, but it's generally you want to stay away from writing in passive voice. But this is a way for you to look at this particular form of feedback. We can go back to our paper that was full of issues of academic dishonesty and plagiarism, and now see what the ETS E Rater is telling us about grammar. It's saying this might be a run-on sentence, and it tells you, make sure you know what the issues are with run-on sentences. It's pretty helpful in terms of its feedback. Are you spelling things correctly? Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. Passive voice here, great example, capitalize the first word of each sentence. This is proofreading. You've got to make sure that you're using this as a proofreader in some ways as well. But this is going to give you another opportunity to look at some of these grammar issues that may or may not be true. This may or may not be helpful, but it does give you an opportunity to see another version of the grammar checker. To compare, this is one of those same papers in Microsoft Word with their grammar checker. And again, it gives you suggestions as to what you should do and how you can change it, spelling at the same time. But this is also pretty helpful because there are features within Microsoft Word where you can see now your readability statistics. It can count your words and characters, sentences per paragraph, the reading ease. This tells you that, as a numerical grade level, what is your writing at as a matter of syllables within the word and number of words within the sentence. And it's saying that in this case, you're writing at about an 11th grade level, which is pretty darn good for a high school research paper. But it's a college level research paper, so you should be writing at grade 12 or higher. So this on Microsoft Word can give you some information, but this is also your key part here. This has to be a feature that's turned on to get your readability statistics, but this paper had 13.3% passive sentences. You want that number as low as possible. You want to be writing in the active voice, not in the passive voice. So these are some of the tools that you can use within the grammar checkers of Microsoft Word and of Turnitin.com. This has been one of the best features that Turnitin.com offers for students and teachers in terms of helping assess the writing before the due date. The Originality report tells us a lot of information. The Grammar E Rater tells us a lot of information, and it's up to you as students to use that information to make your paper better, to make your writer's voice stand out, and then use the experts and the research that they have to support that argument in your paper or that voice that you're trying to bring forth. This is not a question of catching you in plagiarism, and this is not a question of nitpicking everything for grammar. But generally, these tools can be used then to help you avoid some of those common pitfalls. This is designed to allow your argument to come forth, allow your work to come forth, and not to be blocked by issues of plagiarism or academic dishonesty or very choppy or inappropriate use of grammar. So those things get in the way of the message of your paper. So we want to make sure that your message is clearly heard. And this is a way for you to use turnitin.com in order to address some of those things before the due date. Remember, you do it at 11:59, you do it at 11:59 right before it's due, it's too late. These tools are meant to help you out before the due date. So get to work ahead of time. Don't procrastinate. Get the work done. Use the tools. They're there for you. Join us in our third video in the series, our final video in the series, Getting Feedback. Your paper's been graded. Your paper's been reviewed by peers. It's time to get some feedback, maybe for a resubmission, maybe just to learn how to become a better writer. So we're going to take a look at some of that feedback in our next episode. We'll see you out there on the interwebs.